On this edition of Battleground, it's abortion versus the border. How two of the most contentious issues in this election are playing out in the key swing state of Arizona. We'll get the latest from Maricopa County on this second anniversary of the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade. Plus, the battle for Michigan, how the conflict between Israel and Hamas is impacting the Arab American vote in this key battleground state. We'll hear directly from voters on how this is affecting their decision in November. Also, with the first head-to-head debate of the year on tap in Atlanta on Thursday, a look at how both candidates are battling for black votes in the critical swing state of Georgia. I'm Essie Cupp, and this is Battleground. They're two of the most polarizing issues facing voters this year: reproductive rights and the border. Donald Trump has called the border the biggest issue of this election, while the Biden camp continues to make the overturning of Roe v. Wade a central focus. And now, in the critical swing state of Arizona, these two fault lines of American politics are playing out in real time, combining the personal and the political.
When I was 15 years old here in Arizona, I had an abortion. I've never doubted the decision that I made, and I've always been extremely grateful that I had parents that were supportive and not abusive and were able to get me the care that I needed.
I was pregnant when I was in high school, and I definitely wasn't able to take care of myself or a baby at that time.
At the end of the day, regardless of where you are politically, they believe that it is up to a person to choose what they should do with their body.
It shouldn't be a situation where women are going to emergency rooms and being turned away until their life is in jeopardy. That's insane in the United States of America. We don't do that here.
Whoever has the ability has the responsibility. We are here because the preborn cannot speak for themselves and their voices cannot be heard.
Put a cap on a number. We're going to allow the first come, first serve through the border. Should never happen.
I feel like shutting down the border and sealing it off is going to create more problems than what we're currently dealing with.
No one is above the law. We all should follow the laws of the country. Me being a naturalized citizen, I was not born here, but I entered this country the legal way, and I think that's how everyone should enter.
For more on two of the most polarizing issues in this campaign and what it means for voters in Arizona, I'm pleased to be joined by Stephen Nielsen, award-winning reporter with Fox 10 Phoenix. Stephen, so good to see you.
You too.
So you spoke to voters in Arizona. Abortion and immigration are almost always turnout drivers in every election. Do you get the sense that they're more important this cycle?
There is no doubt that it matters more this cycle than others, and it's because on the ballot in Arizona, they actually get a say in these things. There's going to be an abortion question and a border question. On the border, they're asked whether or not local law enforcement officers can enforce border issues. And on the abortion issue, they're going to be asked whether or not abortion rights should be enshrined into the state constitution.
And the impact that that'll have up ballot on the presidential election will be super interesting to watch. Arizona, as you know, has been a reliably red state. Why has it in recent years become a swing state?
Well, demographics have shifted a lot over the last 15 to 20 years. When you drive around out here, you'll see bumper stickers all over the place which say, "Don't California my Arizona." And it's true. It's because there's a ton of Californians that have moved to Arizona in the last 15 to 20 years. We've also seen the percentage of Latinos in this state grow dramatically, and that is a reliably Democratic voter bloc right there.
Well, and obviously immigration is a super important issue to Arizona. It's a border state. I was recently in Maricopa County, and it was definitely the issue on people's minds. Is it as important in other parts of the state, though?
Absolutely. You know, when you talk about that in Maricopa County, the reason we always focus on Maricopa County, it's such a huge portion of the state. They usually say, however that county goes, the rest of the state goes. Yeah. But the rural counties, they have really shown up in force in recent elections, and they go 70, 80% towards the Republicans. What we'll need to really watch is how many of those rural voters show up to vote this time, because the border's on the ballot. They're really going to be engaged this election. Yeah. If you can get a much higher percentage of rural voters, that'll change things.
Right. Well, and the flip of that is, as you mentioned, Latinos make up 33% of Arizona's population. How is the immigration issue cutting for those voters?
Well, it's been interesting to watch. You'll hear from Republicans that they feel like they're making a ton of headway with Latino voters this election. And you see that. You absolutely talk about it. You know, groups like Latinos for Carrie Lake, our Republican Senate candidate out here, used to be these kinds of groups, you know, there'd be a handful of them. Now there's a lot more. So there's anecdotal evidence that it has shifted, but how it shifted has been interesting. Polling really shows that the Latino bloc cares a lot more on having more judges for immigration issues and making legal immigration easier, as opposed to building a border wall, focusing on enforcement.
Well, and lastly, of all the swing states, Arizona has the highest percentage of voters who don't identify with either party. Does that maybe explain the voter split we're seeing with Trump and Ruben Gallego in the Senate leading?
Absolutely. What a tribute to John McCain and what he was to this state. The fact that we are years removed from his death and we still call them McCain voters, the Maverick voters, who are absolutely educated voters. They know which candidates they like and they know why they like them. And it doesn't mean because you vote for Trump that I'm going to vote for every Republican, and because I vote for Biden, I'm going to vote for every Democrat. You can't really tell where they're going to land on each individual issue. And in Arizona, where that makes up such a huge portion of our electorate, that's something to watch.
I was at John McCain's funeral. I know McCain voters very, very well. In Phoenix, great stuff, Stephen. Thank you. We'll continue to follow how both of these issues, access to abortion and border security, are impacting voters in all 7 of our swing states. And the numbers tell the tale of why this matters. In the 2022 midterm elections, 27% of voters cited abortion as most important to them. Look at the dramatic rise of voters who say immigration and border policy are their top issue. 4 years ago, that was the top choice of just 1% of voters. Today, it is nearly 20%, with a large majority favoring Donald Trump and Republicans on this issue. Visit us at battlegroundnews.com and weigh in on today's question. How important are the issues of abortion and the border in deciding who you will vote for in November? But first, more from swing state voters on how abortion and the border are impacting their votes.
I think that abortion should still be legal, and I don't know who thought to even bring back up Roe v. Wade to overturn it, because even though my beliefs might be a little bit different than that, there are still medical reasons that people need to be able to get abortions safely.
Regarding immigration, they should come over legally, and secure the border.
Yeah.
I mean, Biden wants to bring 40 million of them in and give them everything.
We're a nation of immigrants, so I think that people should be allowed to migrate here, but I don't think it should be, free-flowing.
To see what this movement has been able to do in terms of mobilizing people across the state to get behind a simple action of pulling a Democratic ballot and voting uncommitted to send a resounding message to Biden and his administration that the decisions they're making, where they're both aiding and abetting in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, is a decision that sits in direct opposition with how his constituents are feeling.
Welcome back to Battleground. Michigan has been a bellwether the last 2 presidential elections. In 2016, Donald Trump's close victory there helped propel him to the White House. While in 2020, a win in Michigan for Joe Biden was critical to his Electoral College victory. But this year, a new dynamic is in play that could tilt this crucial swing state one way or the other, namely the uproar over the conflict in Gaza and how it's impacting the Arab American vote. Michigan is home to more than 200,000 Arab Americans, by far the most of any of our swing states. And how that vote shakes out in November could be the difference. For more on this, we turn to Caitlin Buss from the Detroit News. Caitlin, I think we should start by making a distinction between Arab American voters who are feeling this issue deeply and personally, and Democrats who are insisting they'll stay home in November as a form of protest against Biden's policies. Are these 2 groups the same?
No, they're certainly not. Not only is Joe Biden losing support, drastic support from Arab Americans in Michigan, but he's also losing support from those who sympathize with the pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza position. This tends to be younger voters with whom he is performing worse than he did in 2020 already. They care about other issues. They're not impressed with how Biden has handled this particular conflict. They interestingly say it might not change their vote, but they're already deciding not to vote for Biden. So he's got 2 different dynamics here, and he's losing support with Jewish voters, of which we have a huge population in Michigan too.
Sure. Well, and you've talked to so many Arab American voters in Michigan. What are they saying about Biden's policy and the war in Gaza and how it's going to impact how they vote?
Sure, they are done. I mean, they have moved on from Biden. We saw that very clearly in the February primary in Michigan, where more than 100,000 Arab American voters voted uncommitted. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going toward Trump, but they are absolutely frustrated with Biden. 95% of Muslim American voters don't support Biden at this point, having voted uncommitted, at least in Michigan.
It's essentially, I mean, if you're staying home, you could see it as a vote for Donald Trump, and his support of Israel is very well established. Has he tried to appeal to Arab American voters in Michigan? Can he? What does that look like?
Yeah, the Trump campaign has, and they're making some headway with people in Michigan. He has a strong ally in Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, who happens to be, the head of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate here that works in the auto industry. He's doing a lot of work for Trump. They've made Arab Americans for Trump as a group. Trump did meet with that community in May. I don't think it ultimately went all that well.
You'd mentioned it earlier. We're still over 4 months from the election, but if there is some kind of ceasefire or a peace agreement between now and then, could that move these Democratic and Arab American voters back to Biden, do you think?
I think it could have some impact. I think a lot of those voters might be gone for good. And, a lot of them have relatives. They have family members who've been killed in the conflict. So they're very frustrated. It's hard to exaggerate, what a loss this is for Biden. The Biden campaign tried to come meet with them earlier in the spring. They said no. So I don't know that they're coming back.
Caitlin Buss with the Detroit News. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, for more on all of this, visit us at battlegroundnews.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, download our interactive swing state map, find our social media links, and weigh in on questions like this. If you live in one of our swing states, has the war in Gaza affected the way you're voting in this election? Let us know. Scan the QR code to vote on our X poll, and follow us for more at BG Newsroom. We'll be right back.
Well, prices are skyrocketed. Every time I go shopping to get items for hot dogs and everything, it's very, very expensive, and prices are going up. So.
Welcome back to Battleground. All eyes are on Atlanta this week ahead of Thursday night's debate showdown between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Polls remain very tight in Georgia, and the importance of African American voters there continues to be a top priority for both campaigns. Just last week, Vice President Harris made not one, but 2 trips to the Peach State in hopes of ensuring strong black turnout for the Democrats in November. For more on this critical week in Georgia, I'm pleased to be joined by Deidre Dukes, reporter and anchor with Fox 5 in Atlanta. Deidre, great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So before we look ahead to a very big week down there in Atlanta, let's look back for a minute. Kamala Harris made 2 trips to Atlanta last week, including a high-profile Juneteenth celebration. Is this a sign of confidence or concern about how things are going for Democrats in Georgia?
Well, of course, Essie, President Biden won Georgia by a razor-thin margin in 2020 by just over 11,000 votes. But he has been trailing former President Trump here in recent polling. So the Biden campaign is investing a lot of time and resources in Georgia to try to energize its base and also to win over those undecided and first-time voters.
Yeah, and the African-American vote in Georgia it's critical for both candidates in 2024, but specifically for the Biden-Harris ticket. Turnout there is really going to be key. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of voter enthusiasm and intensity?
Yeah, absolutely. Black voters are a crucial part of the Democratic coalition the Biden campaign is currently working to build. Now, the black population continues to grow here in Georgia and is largely voting for Democratic candidates. Now, for example, Georgia held its presidential primary in March. Now, 95% of black voters chose a Democratic ballot, which falls in line with voting trends we've seen in past elections. Now, the Biden campaign launched a black voter outreach initiative here in March, opening its first Georgia field office in Savannah, Georgia, and several of these offices have opened across the state in recent months.
Over on the other side, I'm sure you've noticed Donald Trump has been making a concerted effort to woo black voters in many of our swing states, including recent rallies in Detroit, right here in Philadelphia. Are you seeing any evidence there in Georgia that this strategy is working for him?
Democratic leaders I've talked to say they don't put much stock in polling that shows growing support for Trump among black voters here and nationwide, because they say actual voting trends don't show a significant shift. But Republican strategists tell me they are encouraged by those polls and the growing number of blacks who are joining the Republican Party. Now, they do believe that if former President Trump gets somewhere around 15 to 20% of the black vote in Georgia, he would win the state. They think we could see a historic number of blacks voting for Trump this election.
Thanks, Deidre Dukes from Fox 5 in Atlanta. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Up next, we go around the horn to all 7 of our swing states to see where the race for the White House stands this week. Be right back. Welcome back to Battleground. Once again, we take a quick trip to our swing states to ask this one question: what is the current state of the presidential race? And we start right here in Pennsylvania. And Sheba Russell from Fox 29 Philadelphia. Sheba, the race here has been very tight of late. Where are we now?
The record player in Pennsylvania is still skipping in the same place. It is a tight race, but the latest poll by Marist, conducted right after Donald Trump's conviction, shows Trump with a slight dip in support, 2 points ahead of President Joe Biden, but within the margin of error. 2 polls before this Marist one in early May show Trump 3 points ahead of Biden. Inflation and preserving democracy are the biggest concerns for voters polled.
Thanks, Sheba. To the Midwest now, and a view from Michigan, and Caitlin Buss from Detroit News. Caitlin, last week it was extremely tight, but what about now?
Thanks, Essie. Well, the road to the White House runs right through Michigan, and both the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign know it. They're going to be campaigning heavily here throughout the summer. Every issue that is a top issue to voters throughout the country is an issue to Michigan voters: inflation in the economy, immigration, abortion, crime, and those candidates are campaigning here. Trump was leading Biden by 0.1% last time I checked, and so it's anybody's ball game, and I expect it'll stay that close until Election Day.
Thank you, Caitlin. To Wisconsin, and reporter Will Keneally from News 3, now in Madison. Will, a neck-and-neck race there of late. Where are we today?
Hey, Essie. So headlines in Wisconsin have been dominated by former President Trump's visit to Racine. Now, that's in that Rust Belt area between Milwaukee and Chicago. That's actually a key area of the Badger State here that former President Trump is going to want to win come November. Now, we've also been on the lookout for any kind of fallout from the former president's reported comments calling Milwaukee a horrible city. Now, he actually led off his speech about that, saying that he loves Milwaukee, that he was the one that brought the Republican National Convention to the city, and that got some cheers from the crowd in Racine.
Thank you, Will. We head out west to Nevada, and political reporter Jessica Hill from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Jess, Trump has been consistently leading in Nevada. Has that changed?
So former President Trump has been leading in the polls here in Nevada pretty consistently. He was here the weekend before for ahead of the June 11th primary to rally supporters. Probably around like 2,000 people showed up to sit in the sun and hear him speak. He really focused on the Latino community and the issues that he believes are impacting them. The Trump campaign had launched before the event Latino Americans for Trump, a coalition to really rally the Latino community.
Thank you, Jessica. To Arizona we go, and Fox 9 in Yuma, where we find reporter Danielle Burke-North. Danielle, Donald Trump has been consistently leading in the polls there as well. Is that still the case?
Thank you, SE. The latest poll conducted by Emerson College shows a former President Trump leading President Biden by 4 points, just outside of the margin of error. The most recent polls favor Trump, but it's a tight race. And with Arizona now a swing state, it could come down to who wins Arizona on election night.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay, over to Georgia now, and Tia Mitchell from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tia, Trump has been holding about a 5-point lead there of late. How about this week?
In Georgia, where President Biden and former President Trump will be facing off in their first debate of the year, polling shows that Biden is still lagging behind former President Trump. Yes, the kind of aggregate shows that Biden is moving in a positive direction, but still among the battleground states, Georgia is the one where Biden lags the most behind Trump.
Thank you, Tia. And finally to North Carolina and Danielle Battaglia from Charlotte Observer. The last time we checked in on Tar Heel State, Trump had a 5-point lead. Where are we now?
Former President Donald Trump continues to lead in the polls, but we are seeing a massive effort from Democrats trying to send surrogates into the state on a regular basis to talk to voters about what they believe matters most to them. I spent the last week on the ground talking to those same voters, and they're very mixed on who they believe is the better presidential candidate. While we are a battleground state, Democrats rarely are elected as the presidential candidate. For North Carolina, it's happened one time since 1976, and that was former President Barack Obama.
Thanks, Danielle. That's a wrap for this week. We'll see you back here next time on Battleground.